Welcome into Poke the Bear, episode 76, the Alexander Koklachev episode. Ooh, this is a big one. This is one that people are never going to forget.
Let me tell you, Evan, one of these days, he's going to break out. He's going to score 30 goals in the NHL.
It's going to happen. No, book it. It's going to happen. That's our big, we were going to do New Year's resolutions at the end of this episode. Maybe we'll start off with a New Year's resolution. Alexander Koklachev, 40 goals next season, though. Next season. Not this season. But next. But I'm Evan Marinofsky. That is Conor Ryan. Conor, what is up?
Evan, doing well. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Better. Face is getting better. Nose doesn't hurt as much for those who listen to Bruins Beat as well. Little ski accident. Should have seen the other guy. More like other slope. The mountain. There's a dent in the mountain on my
Mountains
nose.
in shambles.
Mountains in shambles. It's unusable. Big divot. Everyone's, skiing through it and getting their ski caught in it. But at any rate, there's real Bruins things to talk about, which is very fun. New Year's, this is actually coming out on New Year's Eve. So New Year's Eve will be when you will be listening. Most people will probably be listening in 2022 as well, a new year. So we're going to have resolutions at the end of this episode, some breakout performers in the second half. But first, there is some real news, and we'll get the COVID stuff out of the way. NHL changes protocols. Now it goes from a 10-day quarantine down to 5, and that is for players and hockey ops staffs, like the coaches, trainers, whomever. Sucks for you, who was in for 10 days.
10 days, yeah.
But changes to 5. What changes do you see coming from this? It makes it easier, I would assume.
Yeah. I think for the Bruins, not just for the Bruins. I think for the rest of the NHL, it's probably, I think for the players, a relief in terms of the fact you can get out there a lot sooner. I mean, let's say the Bruins didn't have this kind of COVID impacted pause that they had, and they had to trudge ahead with. I mean, if we had to watch more games like the one we saw against the Islanders, where they didn't have, Marchand, Bergeron, a couple of those guys, I mean, goddamn, it would have been brutal. So, like, the fact that you avoid kind of walking into those schedule losses, even if, I mean, it seems like inevitable, right, that, you're going to have more positive tests, I'm sure, pop up, especially over the next month or so or during this winter. But the fact that now, instead of it being like, all right, this guy's out of commission for 10 days, we're looking at them missing 3, 4, like 5 games. You look at just the way the Bruins schedule is. 5 is at least a lot more manageable if they're able to test out of it. So if you're the Bruins, it's probably a relief. And all things considered, like you look at a few of these other teams right now coming out of the holiday break that are now getting slammed. Like I think Dallas is getting really knocked around. Pittsburgh's lost quite a couple of guys over the last couple of days.
I've lost track at this point.
Yeah.
Like, that's one of the things. Like, it's just so much. At this point.
It's one of the things too. It's such a news dump that, like, you like in the back of your mind, you still think that like Calgary's like completely messed up, and they're like the healthiest team now, which like seems like all those teams that first got hit are now kind of rounding the corner. So if you're the Bruins, you could very well go into this game on Saturday with pretty much everyone, in the fold. The only guy who hasn't been activated yet is Charlie Coyle. And with these new protocols, you're looking at a case where if he tests out, which by the time this podcast drops, he very well could be like on the ice on Friday at Warrior. But with these new protocols in place, he could be activated because it's been 5 days and he could test out of it. So if you're the Bruins and, plenty of other teams in the NHL, I'm sure you have to be happy with the fact that it seems like they're, changing their protocols and making it more of, it's, Taylor Hall kind of mentioned it that at this point, it's here. It's more about trying to just adjust on the fly and learn to kind of roll with the punches as opposed to, completely stopping things and getting back to maybe where we were a year ago. Like at this point, I mean, you've got 56 games to squeeze in over a full month span. Like you got to get some of these games in starting now. So if you're able to, whether it be like kind of like the NBA doing it with them, if you're able to augment your kind of testing protocols and kind of get the show on the road and able to kind of, again, roll with the punches, it's not going to be perfect. Like we could be a week from now recording a new pod and it could be another 1 or 2 guys in COVID protocols that you have to deal with. But it's at least a lot more manageable when you've got a 5-day quarantine, could have a guy back out there as opposed to 10 days where you're just waiting and, so many cogs in your team could be out of commission.
And the good thing is Coyle is asymptomatic. So That's been what we have heard with him, which is good. And the good thing is for the Bruins, they might be past the worst of it, like the big guys have had COVID at this point and have been out recently. So now it's like, should be healthy going forward here. It's the other teams, as you mentioned, that weren't initially hit, like with the Flames and the Bruins and the Islanders, that are now going to potentially feel the effects of it. Hopefully they don't, but
Yes.
that does feel as if that could be the trend. So that is the deal with the COVID things. In other news, Brad Marchand sounds off. Came out of nowhere, by the way. I mean, he'd voiced some he'd voiced, some opposition to what the NHL did with the Olympics via the media. But then he's like, you know what? I'm just gonna go scorched earth on him. I'm just
Yes.
gonna tweet this, which was from the Notes app.
Yes.
And
I do have the transcript if you'd like me to read it.
ooh, read it. Yes, for
Okay.
sure. I have it as well, so I'll
Okay.
follow along.
uh, from Brad Marchand on Twitter. The NHL and NHLPA can change the rules of the CBA to add a taxi squad so that they don't miss any games and don't lose any money. Dot dot dot. Which has already
Dot,
been
dot, dot.
agreed upon that the players will pay back in escrow until the owners are made whole from what they have lost during this pandemic, regardless of how many games are missed. Dot dot dot. Yet they can't do a taxi squad during the Olympics, so they can honor the agreement they made so the NHL players can go. Please tell me that's not bullshit. And for all of you who want to pipe back about forfeiting pay while being gone, yeah, not a problem. Let the players make their choice.
And you know what Jeremy Jacobs' response to this was?
He probably doesn't even know who
Who
Brad Marchand
who
is.
is who is Brad Marchand?
Yeah, I
I
don't
have a
think
Brad
yeah,
Marchand on my team.
he's an employer. Yeah, exactly.
Mr. Burns up in the
Yeah,
top doing his
yeah.
thing. But I wonder where he wrote that. Like, was he sitting in his locker room stall just like, like, don't bother me. Don't bother me. I'm
I have
trying
to
to put this
imagine for a
together.
lot of these like notes, like posts for athletes, there's a lot of like having multiple people read it over and getting like it's like when you're
Oh, you
crafting
think?
a good tweet and you gotta make sure like is this it's good to tweet. It's like it's like the Cheesecake Factory tweet. Like that had to get through a couple of different eyes before firing that out into the Twitter sphere. Like you need to have
Oh,
a
we
few
have
guys checking
editors.
on
We
it.
have
Yeah, of
editors. I
course.
mean, we're not
This
just
is not
throwing
a
these
one
notes
man
out
operation.
randomly.
Let's be clear.
No. No, no. It's mainly two for you. It's Sarah.
Yeah, exactly.
You're at proofreading.
Yeah, she's
Um,
the brains behind the operation.
yeah, she's the real Connor Ryan. Everyone thinks I'm Connor Ryan, but she's actually the real Connor Ryan. But yes, and what Marchand echoed was a sentiment that I think many around the
Yes.
NHL feel is, what is the deal with this? Why is this a big deal? In terms of that, and I think what it kind of this is two straight Olympics now where we're gonna have to watch overseas players play against each other. Last in 2018 it was like Brian Giunta. Ryan Donato was actually on
Matt
that roster
Gilroy.
too. Matt
Yeah.
Gilroy was on that roster too. So I'm very curious to see who is on each roster. Now that the World Juniors were canceled, will
Yeah.
some of these college kids like Owen Power and Jake Sanderson, will
You hope.
they be in the World Juniors? That would be very, very cool. And then the other thing is the World Cup of Hockey. Is that something that should be brought back? And to me, I think doing that once every 2 years, no brainer. I mean, do it during the summer, or do it, in 2017 it was done, or 16, it was done late summer,
Right.
early fall, I
Yeah.
believe.
It was pretty much like if you were participating in it, it was almost like your lead into camp. I think is pretty
Yeah.
much what it was. So
Which is also fine. Like, guys are getting, they had all off season to train for it. So, having that in Canada or in the US or wherever, to me, I think is the main takeaway out of this. I'm curious what yours is.
yeah, no, I mean I think for Marchand, who's been very vocal about it, like I think as you said, I think the sentiment he shared is a sentiment that's felt by a lot of guys. It's just that Marchand is willing to be vocal about it and actually state it like out
Yes.
for the world to consume, which I think probably a lot of players appreciate because again, we can talk about like I think for a lot of the Discord, whether it be like just tweeting out quotes or something, a lot of the replies are just like, well, you're getting paid millions to do anything in the NHL anyway. Just deal with it. And like you've got that, you've got the fact that I mean, you were looking at like the quarantine restrictions there and those risks, and like I understand the sentiment. Like the NHL is leading it with the fact like, well, these games are postponed, we got to make them up. But like you look at like the quarantine restrictions in China, like there's a lot of second guessing there. Even though I mean, even Patrice Bergeron, who's been to the Olympics twice, said that if it was up to him, he still would have gone. Like for a lot of these players, it means so much to play in the Olympics, and for a guy like Marchand, who we've talked about it before, has kind of staked his claim as arguably the best left wing, one of the best players in the NHL for half a decade now, right? Like, and the fact that he hasn't been able to represent Canada on the Olympic stage, and it's something that he has mentioned, years ago, how much he would take pride in doing that. Like, of course, it's brutal for these guys. It's brutal for him. You feel for, a guy like Stamkos, who hasn't been able to, get that chance before. I don't think he played. He was on like a reserve, I think, in 2014, but didn't get to play. Victor Hedman, which like shocked me. I felt like he was like just like an easy shoe in on some of those teams for Sweden. He's never had a chance. So, yeah, you hope that they do something to accommodate some of these players, whether that be like a World Cup, which is what Taylor Hall mentioned as something that they should do, or Bruce Cassidy kind of mentioned during our last media availability, like what if the NHL just, switched gears and participated in like the Summer Olympics? Like that's what basketball does. Like basketball is technically a winter sport, but
Yes.
NBA is not going to grind their season to a halt and let these guys go over there. Like, so why not have it be like kind of the World Cup where it's July, August? Again, these guys maybe sacrifice their summers a little bit, but hell, these guys were also willing to sacrifice friggin' 4 to 5 weeks in a hotel in China just for the chance to play in
Yeah.
it, right? Like, I feel like that's a very minor concession if it allows you to play in the Olympics. So, I mean, that seemed like a pretty good compromise for both parties here for the NHL. I mean, you don't lose out money, and the players get to play on the Olympic stage, which I think means so much to them. So, um, whatever the case may be, hopefully they're able to get something sorted out. And for a lot of these players, because again, I think as much as the NHL doesn't make money off of it, it's still good for the game to have your top stars over on that stage with that exposure. And I mean, look how much like the NBA benefited internationally from, pro players being over there. And I know hockey is already kind of, ingrained in markets outside of, North America and Europe, especially, but just to have, Connor McDavid up against Austin Matthews and Patrick Kane and all these other guys on that stage with those exposure that the Olympics bring, it'd be only a good thing for the league, for the players who get to play in it. So you hope that whether it's the Summer Olympics or maybe World Cup of Hockey, they're able to do something. Because especially for these guys like, McDavid's and the Matthews and the Pasternaks, you have to imagine they'll get their chance in some capacity down the road. But for these guys like Marchand, you hope they're able to do something in the near future, because it'd be a shame if guys who have worked their way up to establish themselves as one of the best players in the league get that opportunity to represent their country. Because if not, it's just a shame all around.
You mentioned hockey being big in markets outside of here. I mean, did you see Vladimir Putin scored 7 goals? And I don't know if
Shocking.
you saw that on Twitter. He scored 17 goals in an 18-7 win
It's
for Russia.
Mint steps on the ice, and it's like rookie mode and be a pro when you're in like the OHL.
Yes.
And the coach is like, well, you could have done a lot better. It's like, dude, I scored 9 goals and had 14 freaking assists. Like, what do you want me to do? Well, you missed
Yeah.
that back check there. So
The best, or you simulate a few games and it's like you're down in the minors. You go from like the first line to the minors in NHL be a pro
that's
mode.
like when you're in like training camp. You go through like the first 4 games, and it's like, well, you're trending upward. You scored 20 goals in 4 preseason games, and then you like sim 3 games, and it's like you punch the owner in the face. You like were like a -10. Like you're back down. You're back in the AHL. Back to Providence
Y-
for you.
You're gone. You're gone.
Yes.
But no, I like the idea of going to the Summer Olympics. I completely kind of spaced that, but to me, I think that makes the most sense. Like that, you don't have to grind your season to a halt. Like that ultimately makes the most sense. I'm just curious if they actually do it, because it's
Yeah.
not just like the NHL's decision to do it; it's the entire Olympics decision to do it. But I think you easily could do it. Just don't do it in Boston, because the ice will be pretty bad. The ice will
Yes.
be pretty bad in Boston. The other thing was with the World Cup of Hockey. Remember that Team North America? That was like the craziest thing.
Yes.
Matthews, McDavid. I forget who was McKinnon on that team too.
I think
I
so.
mean,
Eichel, right? Like they had.
Eichel. They were
Yeah. No.
stacked.
They
That was a
was.
fun team.
Yeah. I mean, even the World Cup, like it's not the Olympics, but still was fun to watch. Like, and if
And
they.
in soccer, the World Cup is the biggest thing.
Yes, exactly. So you have to do something, because even if like without COVID, like Marchand more or less said like the NHL was still not happy about setting aside like 3 weeks of their schedule, losing money, doing all those things for it. So it seems like both parties are still going to be button heads with this for years to come, even if COVID doesn't become an issue. Like at some point, it's just like you need to completely kind of change the landscape, and whether that's World Cup or summer, you got to do something at a different time frame that doesn't coincide with the NHL schedule, because NHL's maybe they'll budge when it comes to especially like a CBA extension, but it's still going to be like a far from easy process just to get it all scheduled.
I just saw Marina Mahar tweet a picture. Vaughn Custom Sports posted a picture on Facebook of Tuukka Rask pads and blocker and glove, his
Wait,
whole
he's coming
set.
back? Holy shit!
Isn't that wild? And
Yeah,
it says set, like set period. And it's so funny. I love the uh the unveiling of Tuukka Rask coming back as if he hasn't been practicing with the Bruins for a month now. Like I find that
I
fascinating.
feel like when like the news finally like when like the Bruins tweet like we have signed Tuukka Rask to a like 1 year extension like a 1 year contract prorated, like the reaction shouldn't be like yes, it should be like yeah that's about right, like yeah no shit
Yeah.
he's been on the ice for a month and a half now and like we've said since like September like yeah you'll probably have him back. Like, it's
Yeah.
not gonna be really much of a surprise. Like, it's inevitable at this point. Like, it's not like all of a
L-
sudden we're gonna get to January 15th and like the Avalanche sign him, which would be hilarious if like this entire
That'd be
time he just
awesome.
pulls like an Uno reverse card and just signs somewhere else, goes to Edmonton. But yeah,
That'd be tremendous.
I think it's fair to assume he's gonna be back with the Bruins.
Yes, and that's the funny part. It's like it's not like it's David Krejci walking through the door. The only day when it was like legitimately um like a big deal to, "Oh my god, Rask is coming back,"
Was his
is when
first day. Yeah,
it
he
was
just
his
showed
first
up.
day. Like, that's the day when it's like, "Oh, shoot." Like, that's when it's like, "Oh my god." When they announce as you said, when they announce him, just, "Well, yeah, we knew that.
That's
We knew that
about
was
right.
coming." Yeah, makes sense. We've been preparing for this moment for, like, 2 months now, you know?
Yes.
Like, not surprising. Um but, Cassidy did mention the plan for Tuukka Rask, and that plan seems to be he will start off in Providence. See, Connor's not even good enough to be an NHL goalie. He's in Providence. This guy stinks. Hopefully, when he's out of Providence, we can get another milk crate incident. That's what I'm hoping for.
It's like just a good throwback Thursday. Like it's almost like you know when those wrestlers go back and do like a small like circuit to like a smaller league or what have you. They stop at like the random gymnasiums for parents. Like that's what he should do. Like a full like barnstorming. Like just shows up. They play like Stone Cold Steve Austin's music as he throws the milk crates on the ice. Like that's what should happen.
Slams his stick on the post.
Yeah,
Has to happen.
exactly.
Has to happen. But I to me, I mean, again, this isn't a surprise, you know, and I
No,
think and getting him eased into action, I think is a good thing. Like I think going down to Province for a bit, good thing. And I mean, I'm just curious to see how he plays with in net with Olmark and having Swayman down in Providence. It's just gonna be, you know, I mean,
uh,
again, there's nothing new here to say. We've been talking about him coming
it,
back for
it's
months now.
it's mostly just hilarious that like he's still not technically signed, but like they're literally talking like they have mapped out this entire plan of like yeah, like the legitimate dates of like the 8th through the 12th were on the road. Like he'll probably be in Providence, like getting some reps. Like he's not even technically signed yet. Like you fall down the rabbit hole, but like the fact that like they're just like going ahead with this guy who's technically like a free agent is just hilarious. They've mapped out like this entire itinerary for this dude already. But yeah, whether it be him down in Providence, when you look at like just the time frame for him, none of it's really a surprise. The only way that like kind of this narrative changes is let's say the Bruins start play on Saturday and over the next 2 weeks, like Olmark and Stern are both completely like locked down, you know, great performances out there, which I still doesn't think impact like the Bruins bringing back Rask, but maybe that changes like how they deal with that rotation. Like, is it just like a cut and dry, like Raskin, Swayman down at Providence? Is it like, do you roll with a 3-man rotation? Like, it's one of those things where that's the only like remaining factor is how they kind of just juggle that goalie rotation going forward. But in terms of Rask return and how probable it is, like he's coming back. Like he's coming. Like it's not going to be a surprise.
I,
Do not be
I'll
surprised
s-
when that
I'll
tweet
say it's
comes out.
I'll say it's a safer bet than Bet Online.
I
I will
mean,
say it. Woo-hoo-hoo. Hands up.
yeah,
That's my take on it. I also loved. I think it was Ryan Lambert who tweeted, "How on earth are the Bruins getting away with this Tuukka
yeah.
Rask
It's
stuff?"
hilarious. Like the fact that like they're just mapping out like legitimate dates now is great. But again, like the Bruins said they're still having contract talks with him, but
Which is hilarious.
it's yeah, it's so cut and dry now. Like it's don't be surprised, guys.
Yeah. No, it's who was it? Was it the McAvoy extension when I think it was Cam Neely
Oh,
came out
yeah,
and basically said that they re-signed him, and then I think Sweeney walked it back, and we were like, "Oh, shut up! Like you,
yeah, okay, and then, like,
it's
4
pretty
days
much
later, yeah,
signed."
yeah, exactly.
It's
Good
hard to
job,
keep these
guys.
things in,
You
especially when you're Tuukka Rask and you're practicing with the team.
Yeah,
So, fun stuff over there. Again, there's not much new to say. We've been talking about this Rask stuff not just since the start of the season, but since the end of last season. Like
yes.
we've done so much on Rask. I can't think of like new things until he gets out there in a game. I can't sit here and be like, oh, he's gonna play with Swayman, play with Olmark, and Swayman, maybe even Providence, maybe they'll do three. We've done it a million times. All right, now we get into the fun debate section of Poke the Bear. And with the second half on the horizon and the new year on the horizon, we thought, well, it's time to take a look ahead, right? Take a look ahead. And we'll start with who is going to break out in the second half on the Bruins. There's a lot of candidates for this. But why don't you go first, Connor? Who is going to break out in the second half?
Yeah, I don't think mine's going to be particularly surprising. Mine's more of a, it's almost in the same realm as Tuukka Rask in terms of the yeah no shit category. But I think it has to be Pasternak, right? Like, I mean, you look at just um, his level of production. Again, maybe it's like a statement on his reputation in league circles or just the expectation that Bruins fans have for a guy that his numbers are considered underwhelming when he's still got what 21 points in 26 games. But when it comes to weighing Pasternak's ability and how effective he is, it usually stops and starts with his ability to find the back of the net. And 8 goals through 26 games, 25 goal pace over 82 games, not really going to cut it. And again, it's not particularly fair that you need a guy like Pasta to score 45 plus goals just to like carry the scoring burden for this team. But such as the hand the Bruins have been dealt in terms of just the way that guys aren't finishing. So I think when you look at Pasternak, yes, there's some level of concern that he's still missing a few of these kind of gimme chances that you would imagine in years past he just easily either taps in or fires home. But I think Bruce Cassidy mentioned it. The only way you're get really concerned about Pasternak's game is if he's drifting in the ozone or he's not getting shots on net. I mean, I think he's shooting more than he ever has in his career. It's just the fact that his shooting percentage is way below his average. Like I understand for goal scorers and things like shooting percentage, like there's a lot of variance that comes with it, and there'll be plenty of years where it dips below your average. But to go from a 13%, almost 14% career shooter to 7 this year, including I think it's like 3.3 at 5-on-5 play, that's like a ridiculous outlier. One that you imagine is going to rebound in due time if keeps on getting those chances, keeps on firing on the net. Sooner or later, those are going to go his way. And again, some of it's also, for him getting a little bit closer to the net. I think he's averaging like 35 feet in terms of his shots. So getting a little bit closer on the power play. Cassidy mentioned that, earlier this year we talked about Patrice Bergeron not scoring a goal and what has to happen. And Detroit just decided not to cover him in the bumper for that entire game. So who knows? Maybe you get a situation where you play a team like, Buffalo or Ottawa where, they cover up Bergeron on the bumper and finally Pasternak's given that chance to get a few of those pucks through from his usual spot at the elbow and gets started and gets on a roll. Like, it feels like all Pasternak needs is to, a 2-goal game or something just to get going. He's too good of a player. He's getting those chances that it feels more or less inevitable that, I don't think he's going to be scoring 25 goals in 10 games or something out of the break, but he's still a guy that you should expect at least 35, maybe 40 goals. And, they desperately need that production from him. So I'm not hitting the panic button over, his maybe lack of scoring so far this year, but it sure seems inevitable that it's going to at least tick back to the mean and get back to a guy that you can pencil in for a much steady production going forward.
Yeah, I mean, again, all markets correct. So it feels
Yes.
like that's a good example of that. Bringing some stock market knowledge into David Pasternak makes a little bit of sense. My breakout candidate for the second half's a little bit off the board. It's Brandon Carlo. I think Brandon Carlo is due for a much better half. I don't mean this in terms of points and goals. I mean this in terms of straight defense, right? There have been a lot of times in the first half where, and Cassidy's mentioned it. He's you can see him agitated at it, where Carlo's just not been as good defensively as he should be. No stats to back this up, except for the fact that there's just been a lot of times we've seen him get beat, miss coverages, issues in his own zone. I think it's safe to assume that Brandon Carlo will fix himself and it'll correct in the second half. He will be much better defensively. And I think a holiday break like this can certainly help for that. He signed a huge extension over the offseason. They have high hopes for him. He's an assistant captain, rotate kind of guy. At some point, you have to think he's going to start defending well, and we've seen it for years now. It's all right. Had a few down months, but I do project him to come back in the second half. Obviously, another candidate, Taylor Hall, right? That's another big one up there with Pasternak and guys that we expect to see a lot more out of. I think there's a better chance that Pasternak goes on the tear you think he goes on than I think Taylor Hall goes on the tear that people hope he goes on. But I do think that, again, the chances have to start coming for Hall at some point. Puck's got to start going in the net. Points got to start being posted. So that's another candidate. Are there any other candidates you have for breakout second half? I feel like there's a lot. I feel like there's a lot more than just
There's a
three.
lot, yeah, and it's one of the things like maybe not breakout, but just in terms of just like standard production. Like, I mean, like the obvious one is like Foligno, right? I mean, this is the guy who, you know, he when they announced the signing for him, he's definitely one of those ones where it's, you factor in some of the intangibles of leadership, how he is in the room, and all that stuff's great, but also like you need some level of production. Like, you didn't sign him, at his age, hoping that he was going to be the 20 goal, 50-point guy he was in the past, but still, you want like at least like a 30-point guy in that spot in the middle six. So for him, you hope that he's able to get more of a shot mentality, get more chances down low and starts producing, because you need like something, right? Like you just need some level of production. It's one thing like for a few of these guys where um, for the Bruins and the lack of production, where it's not like if over a full 82 game span, like a guy like Howla and Foligno had, 25, 30 points, maybe you want a little bit more, but at least they're kind of producing. They're plugging in some of those gaps. You need more than 0 goals through almost 20 games for Foligno, right? Like you need more than 1 goal for Howla over 26 games. Like you need at least an uptick in terms of that production just to get the rest of this lineup kind of going along.
Yeah, and that segues us perfectly into New Year's resolutions. I'll start because it makes the most sense with what we just talked about. My New Year's resolution for the Bruins: more scoring from Don Sweeney's signings over the offseason, right? They do not look so good right now. Hala, Nosek, Foligno. He can put Mike Riley in that category because he was technically a free agent. Derek Forbert, although he's had no issue scoring goals, which
As
is
we all
wild.
expected. Yeah.
It is just nuts to
Totally
think, like, out
normal.
of that group, Forbert's I believe, the leading goal scorer out of the names I just mentioned.
Yes.
Hala doesn't have more. Yeah, that's
Yes.
nuts.
That's not
That's
great.
wild.
It's not good.
That's a tweet right there, by the way.
Mm.
That's that. See, now this is like how we put tweets through editors, right? Throw ideas off each other. But yes, it's unacceptable how the signings have done. And I'd mentioned at the all through the offseason that this team's success will be predicated on how do the depth guys do scoring goals and putting points up. And what do you know? They haven't been scoring or putting points up. And what do you know? This team is no man's land right now in the NHL. So to me, the New Year's resolution has to be Foligno's got to start scoring. Holla's got to start producing. Even Nosek, Mike Riley's got to be a little bit better back there. So these free agent signings have to look better, or else another bum off season from Don Sweeney, which you do the math,
Not
right?
great.
We were saying this after the Islanders series this past spring. Like, I don't even know if we're going to get to the island. I don't know if we're going to get to a second round or even a first round at this rate. So, New Year's resolution for the Bruins: free agent signings got to start scoring.
Yeah, and I think for mine, kind of going off of that, I think just maybe as a team-wide mentality, it's just getting closer to that grade A ice and getting more high danger chances in terms of in terms of ways to get more of that offense out of this group. Because look at them, you look at this team, goaltending has improved as the year's gone on, and it should only get better with Rask in the equation. Defense, it's been a bit of a mixed bag in terms of the chances they've given up, but all things considered, they're, I think, 7th in the league in goals against. They're first in expected goals, which seems wild because, like, even the eye test makes you feel like they're still like missing at least another piece there. But in terms of like the actual concerns, it's clearly the offense and generating and finishing those chances. And for this team, it's you're second in the league in shots per 60 minutes at 5-on-5 play. So you're getting these chances, but how much of them are, either getting easily turned aside by a goaltender or really making that defense work? I mean, the Bruins are 23rd in the NHL in terms of high danger chances, despite getting those so many shots on net. So for the Bruins, it's not like a major tweak or a change in structure or what you do. It's all about just kind of simplifying and getting to that grade A ice and, getting chances and burying them down low, because you're seeing too much of, shots that aren't leading to much, that opposing team is, easily corralling and sending the puck back the other way. I mean, you just look at this team and the fact that their expected goals is, I think, -6. So pretty much they're scoring 6 goals fewer than they expected in terms of how many chances they're generating, which I don't know. You look at how many 1-goal games the Bruins have been in this year. Those 6 goals could have helped out quite a bit. You probably have at least maybe another 4 points in the standings if a few more of those goals go your way. So again, it's one of those things where you talk about it and people get very pissed about expected goals, because it's like, I feel like Billy Bean in that Moneyball scene where he's like going through the free agents. People are like, what the fuck is this? Like, this is what it is with expected goals, where I think some people view it as like an imaginary stat, but you look at like the formula to start generating that more offense. It's not reinventing the wheel. It's all about getting down low into grade A ice and generating those chances. And you've seen far too many kind of one and done plays for the Bruins in the ozone, where whether it's struggling with entries or getting a shot through and not making much out of it, not generating a rebound, not getting a tip, all those things. You need more of that from this team, and sometimes all it takes is just a greasy goal or a tip play or something just to get on the board and get rolling, and you go from there. So you look at the fact that the Bruins have so many guys who seem either snake bit with Pasternak or playing below their level with Foligno or Howla, that it feels inevitable that offense is going to uptake at some point. But the Bruins can make it a lot easier for themselves if they just keep it simple and start getting those pucks through around grade A ice a lot more.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like a lot of these games, the Bruins are not lacking in shots, but
Yeah.
they're lacking in good scoring chances. It's been the case in almost every game. You can go through the heat chart and all those things, and
And
it's
and,
all these shots, but
and,
none
and
from
it's
good areas.
And it's also ironic that, like, the few times where they have been outshot, they've, like, won those games. Like, they got
Yes,
woefully outshot, like, in Edmonton. I think they got outshot in Calgary and won both those games.
Calgary.
So, yeah, it's almost
Yeah.
like maybe quality over quantity means a little bit more in terms of, generating those chances.
Yes. Makes sense. Wild how that works. Anyways, those are our New Year's resolutions, guys. We expect to break out in the second half. But another thing you should watch the second half is everything going on at BSJ. What can the people look forward to over at Boston Sports Journal?
Yeah, I think going into the new year, we've obviously got 56 games over the span of 4 months, so there'll be plenty of stuff to talk
Oh,
about. We've got the eventual return of Tuukka Rask. We've got the trade deadline coming up in a few months, which I'm sure there'll be plenty of talk there, regardless of where the Bruins are in the standings. It feels like they're always in play or rumored to be in play for multiple players. So we'll have all the breakdowns, analysis on rumors, all that good stuff, features, all that stuff over at BSJ going into the new year. So subscribe to BostonSportsJournal.com. Want to follow me on Twitter? You can do that at Conor Ryan _93.
and the good thing is you'll have analysis when the Bruins eventually trade for or sign John Michael Lyles and Lee Stempniak at the deadline.
Hell
So
yeah.
people can look forward to that as well.
That's
Historical
what
context will be important.
that's like what the Bruins should do. Like, how like in the NBA with these like hardship exemptions, they're just bringing back like old players. Just bring back like Sean Thornton, Greg Zanin. Like, let's
Yes.
bring back a squad.
Br- Brian Ralston. Get
Hell
the crew
yeah.
back together. Get the crew back
Exactly.
together. I'm for it. But anyways, yes, go do all of that. And that is Conor Ryan. I'm Evan Marinofsky. You Poke the Bear listeners. Have a great rest of your week and an awesome, happy new year.